Hello and welcome to this exciting Friday night on Animal World Live with me, your host, Brent Smith. And we've got a jam-packed show for you and we've got a special guest. I hope you enjoy. Hello, and welcome to this Friday night Animal World Live with me, Brent Smith. Great to have you all here. It's been a really busy day and I'm a bit flustered, but I will be with you in a second. TJS, Widget, Mimi, who else we got here? Sandy, Aegis, Boo, Vicky, Madash, Charles, Dov, Daniel, Julie, Vicky. That's Vicky again. Sorry. As I said, we are rushing around. We've just recently got back from the bush, and you'll see me typing here. I'm just chatting to Cole to let him know when we're going to call him. So, of course, because we are on Animal World Live, we're going to catch up with what's been happening with our live cams in just a second. Once I'm finished saying hello and typing, I'm trying to do too many things at once, of course. So we're going to have to wing it a bit because Cole's been quite busy. So yes, okay, I've done that. Now I can see what's coming up. Now I'm ready for what's been happening on the live cams. Hi, and yeah, so we've had quite a few animals on the live cams. VM and Charles have been checking out what's been going on, and we've had some lovely sightings, so we can't wait to share them with you now. And I'm seeing them for the first time just as you are. Oh, isn't that amazing? So that's the old Leadwood hyena den being visited by a black-backed jackal, and I wonder if that is part of the release project that we've been documenting from Rhino Revolution. So the jackals are spreading out nicely, and so very exciting to see a black-backed jackal. Lady Macbeth, yes, Cole, as it is at his house. We're going to be conversing via the Skype because we're so fancy like that. Hello, Sketch Cats. Hello, King Quad. Daniel. Who else have we got joining? Annie. And Butterfly. Betty. Oh, did I miss a live cam highlight while I was saying hello to everyone? Maybe we'll just have to play that one again. I think it was probably a genet. I missed one. I was saying hello to everyone. Sorry about that. As I said, we've been absolutely flying. Oh no, it was not a genet. It was indeed an African civet. One of our favourite visitors to the critter cam. Thank you so much, Boo. Redstone says the hyenas keep wondering who keeps intruding on our home. Well, the hyenas currently have a new home, but we hope they'll be back soon. So it's always great to see a civet, and Critter Cam has definitely been our best spot for seeing civets regularly. So really, really cool to catch up with them. Now, as I said, Now, isn't this amazing? This is Critter Cam. This is in my garden, basically, and it's another jackal. Now this is a first for Critter Cam, so very, very exciting to have black-backed jackal. I've seen them on the estate driving in and out, but this is the first time we've caught them, and that is not even 30-40 feet from where we're sitting now. So the jackals have been moving in, and it's nice to see them recovering from the outbreak of rabies that decimated the canid populations around this area a couple of years ago. Okay, so absolutely wonderful to be able to see that right in the garden. Butterfly, we do have hyenas here. Oh, there's a civet. But so far I keep my cooking pans in the kitchen where they belong, so no luck for the hyenas to steal them. So our civet visited us again, and of course another one of our favorite critters, and one of the more relaxed critters around our critter cam pond, and that is of course the genet. Yes, that at the moment is true, Redstone Prime, but that could change at any moment. Oh, look how lovely that tail is as it just flicks through there. Now, not only do the genets come drink, but they also come look for food around this area. Of course, water attracts all sorts of different food sources, and we've had mice and all sorts drinking there. So very, very cool to catch our genets again. Okay. And of course, our favorites, or one of our favorites, and that looks like Hope and Calf and Rhino Bull. I think it's number 20. Or is it 42? I think it's 42. But there we go. So always great to catch up with the rhinos. And they've been hanging around in that area for quite a while. Well, not quite exactly at SAST. Now look, a silly rhino bull is moving the log that was there to help other birds and insects climb out, but I'm sure someone will come and fix that tomorrow. So that's what, if any of you are wondering what the logs are in some of the pans, it's to help some of the smaller critters get in and out. Yes, a lovely little group of rhino there. Exactly, Redstone Prime. Nature is truly unpredictable, and you never know what's going to happen when and there. Now I'm waiting to see, do we have anything more, Vim? Oh, we do! Oh, hello, little one. That is a baby genet. Oh my goodness, look at it! Isn't it just the cutest thing you've ever seen? Oh my goodness, that is amazing! Maybe we should do this. I don't watch them before. Every time. There goes Mom running after it. Where are you going, you little terror? Oh no, he's back! Oh my goodness, maybe we should do this. It's a baby. Isn't that absolutely wonderful? Maybe I should also watch these with you, so I don't know what's coming. Isn't that absolutely adorable? I've just got this warm fuzzy feeling all over. A baby genet caught on Criticam. Isn't that special? Wow. I'm taking Vim, save that for last, or is he going to surprise me again with something else? Actually, Vim, I want to watch the baby genet again. I want to watch the baby. Let's bring back the baby genet. The first one. That's where he's creeping around there. Let's bring back the baby genet. Oh, look at it. That is so sweet. So nervous. So obviously quite young and just starting to explore. And at that age to come down to Criticam probably means that the den or nest that it was born in is not too far, and his mom chasing after it. Oh, that's just too wonderful. That is just too wonderful. Oh, so sweet. Isn't that magic? Absolutely magic. Now, as I said, we have a special guest tonight, and that's Cole du Plessis from the Endangered Wildlife Trust, and we're going to be chatting wild dogs with him. But Cole's been quite busy, and we've been quite busy, so we're going to try something new, the wonders of technology. Now, Vim, my volume has to be on my Skype, correct? Okay. Oh no, that's horrible. Go away. Let's see. VM's going to think. Let's see what happens. And let's get our cameras going. Ooh, look at me. I look scary. Cole, can you hear me? No.
Yes, I can.
There you go. Okay. Have you got Cole's picture, Vim?
Am I coming through okay?
Yes, good. You're live. Vim's just tweaking some magic so we can bring you up on screen.
Oh, good. Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me. Yeah, more. We're very excited. I live in Tlhahluwe Game Reserve, and from one of the GPS collars that one of the alpha females is wearing, we started noticing that the collar data kept kind of going back to the same place that it day by day, which is often an issue because on one hand it could mean that there's an individual in the pack that's snared and there might be an issue, or it might mean that she's denning. And pleased to say that we did follow up and that she is denning. So it's nice. We in that denning season now, and being an endangered species, we need as many pups as we can get.
Some news. So I think actually, if I think about it, the first wild dogs I ever saw in the wild were dispersals from the Hluhluwe and Mfolozi pack, but in the early 90s. Oh no, sorry, probably late 80s, 89, 90,
Oh, wow.
when I was a little kid, and when my dad was still in the process of setting up Pinda, they came through onto Bombeni, which was now part of Pinda, and that was the first wild dogs I ever saw on my way to school at Hluhluwe Primary School.
Ah, fantastic. Jeez. I think you had a little bit easier than I did. Me and my brother from a young age, when I was 13 years old, wild dogs were the only thing I ever wanted to see. And my parents, luckily enough, they weren't as keen in conservation as we were, but they loved that we were passionate about it. So my parents often used to take us off to these holidays in Zululand to look for wild dogs. And then that didn't work, so we went up to Kruger, and then that didn't work, so we went up to Botswana. And it full circle. I was 21 when I finally saw my first wild dogs, which took quite a long time to get to that milestone.
Wow. So Betty, that's a great question. So I'm just going to let Cole introduce himself fully so everyone knows who he is quickly, and then I will get your questions through to Cole.
Cool. Thanks very much, Brent. So I mean, very briefly, my name is Cole du Plessis. I work for the Endangered Wildlife Trust, and the program that I fall under is called the Carnivore Conservation Program. I'm based in Kwa-Zulu Natal, but my main role is to coordinate the wild dog range expansion project. So in a very short kind of series that looks at conserving the current wild dog population that we have outside of the Kruger National Park in the more managed fenced populations. And then in the more exciting kind of chapter, more and more we're looking at doing these reintroductions into places in Africa where wild dogs have become locally extinct. And so the other part of my job is to start collaborating and working with partners and identifying feasible habitat where we can use the stable, strong population that we have in South Africa to reintroduce packs into areas that they haven't been for some time. I think one of the highlights that come to mind are Gorongosa National Park, where in the last 2 years we've now introduced 29 wild dogs between two packs, and their numbers are up to about 56 wild dogs. And it's a case in point where they had been locally extinct for about 60 years, and now we've managed to reintroduce them. And that's kind of, in a very quick summary, those are kind of where my kind of responsibilities for, but like maintaining what we have and restoring what we've lost.
And as like you, my favorite animal is a wild dog, so I'm always happy to talk puppies, as a lot of our viewers know from my time at Safari Live. If I found dogs, it was pandemonium. I'd scream puppies and off we'd go. Keep up with it.
Of course.
So we've got a question here from Betty B. Would like to know, how long before they deliver their pups do they go around finding a den or looking for suitable den sites?
It's a really good question. So basically, the gestation period of a wild dog, as we know, is 10 weeks old, and generally, just from analyzing the satellite data that we often use, or from the intensive monitoring that we sometimes do in the research and the management of wild dogs, you can often start like following the alpha females movement, and in that time they sometimes prep more than one den, and sometimes those dens are many kilometers apart. So it's a very interesting question for me, because if you bring it back to what they do throughout the year, packs packs obviously share a territory, but they also share areas that we call resting spots or resting places. And these are areas that might have low predator densities, high prey numbers, or might just share some kind of safety, a safety net for those pups. So in my opinion, I mean, the beauty of working with wild animals is we'll never know for 100% sure of what goes on in their brains. But, from what I've seen and learned in terms of doing intensive monitoring of wild dogs, is that right throughout the year, they kind of know their territory, they know where it's safe, and when that gestation period peaks, you start noticing them spending and dashing to those different resting sites. So I myself, just because I've taken so much interest in den sites and the strategy behind den sites, I've sometimes actually walked in to investigate those dens. And you sometimes see where a female has dropped her pups, but you can actually backtrack to other GPS points where they've kind of been visiting, and there's actually been den sites or preparation done to other den sites in the making. So yeah, I mean, a bit of a long-winded answer, but I think that I don't think we can underestimate the intelligence of these wild dogs and the strategy, and then the thought process that goes behind it. They're fairly small to medium-sized carnivore. They have many threats, and a lot of good thought process has to go into choosing an ideal den site. And I think more than that, what's so great is when you look at wild dogs in the Kalahari, up in the Waterberg and Zululand and the Lowveld, where ends are quite different because the biomes are different and the topography and the geography are different. But when you really analyze the way they chose, why they chose the den and where it is and how they chose it, it's phenomenal. I think the level of intelligence, as I said before, can't be underestimated in that thought process.
Just quick, thank you, Mary. Thank you very much. Mary says, happy Friday to the whole painted dog pack. And then I saw another, there are lots of people saying hi, Cole, Tanis, Lisa, and then there's someone who desperately wants to say hello to you. Her name on YouTube is Lady Macbeth. She says she's waving frantically at Cole du Plessis. It's Sue from Mkuzi Wildlife Act. We'll be back as soon as I can get there. She says hello. There's a lot of people wondering, is your brother's name Rowan? There's a guide at Ngale who's on Wild Earth at the moment. They're wondering if that's your brother.
Rowan. No, I do have a younger brother called Bailey. He's 7 years younger than I am. But Rowan, there's a vet called Rowan Leeming who lives with me here at Hlui Game Reserve. He's one of my best friends, and he's done all the massive wild dog relocations into Gorongosa and to Northern Kruger, and into Kurungani Game Reserve. He's the vet for the job when we do that kind of work. So he's not my brother, but I am very close to him. I'm not sure if that's the Rowan that the person has in mind.
Yeah, in the low.
Sorry, no relation. I don't think.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Barbara, just a quick update there. Yes, we've reached our goal for the cams for the Waterberg, and we're actually hoping to head up there tomorrow. So you're just going to have to keep an eye. Cole and I are not going to give anything away just yet, because that's we will keep you updated on what's happening there. So remember, guys, if you have any questions, particularly about wild dogs for Cole, that you would like to ask, because I've got some of my own, please pop them in here and I'll get them through to Cole. Now, I mean, I've been lucky enough. I've looked at wild dogs in lots of different, I think about 7 or 8 different countries. I've been lucky enough to see wild dogs, and it always fascinates me. And their hunting strategy, and there's been a lot of debate about whether they're just coarse or is there actually planning to it, and etc. And also their success rate on kills. Now, some people say 80%, some people say it's not nearly as high as we think. What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, Brent, I really love the question. It's funny because I come from a little bit of a scientific background, but I definitely wouldn't regard myself as an academic. I kind of land up falling more into the management side of things in terms of most of the work that I do. I think one thing, and as I said, coming as a scientist, is we so often like to look at the black and white in conservation and put rules on these animals. And I think wild dogs in particular have their way of continuously breaking. We put them in a box and they very quickly break the box. And time again, I'm still humbled by what they teach me and what I know about them. In terms of that hunting, I've I've witnessed wild dogs chasing hippos before. I've watched them running around elephants, and I've um like anything you can imagine, like in terms of monitoring. I've kind of seen the chasing zebra, chasing giraffe, you name it. And I think my one question to a very strong researcher would firstly be, well, wild dogs are playful animals, like part of the pack. And they, like, let's be honest, they like to stir the pot and they like to have fun, like they're mischievous animals sometimes. So I think the very first question that I always ask when we talk about these 80% success rates is, were they actually hunting, or was it just a game? Like a domestic animal, your domestic dog might chase after a hardy-dar. In their minds, they don't really want to kill it, but it's a fun thing to do. And I think so often, especially when pups become yearlings and young adults, when they see things, they chase them. And we just because they don't capture them, we can't say, well, it's a failed hunt. Wild dogs are less successful than we thought. So I think it's very difficult to define what a hunter's verse and how hungry the dogs are. I mean, they might have eaten the day before and they've got fat stomachs, and they think, well, if we catch it, we catch it. If we don't, then, so what, kind of thing. So it's all these kind of parameters, and I think it's important from a scientific perspective to have gray areas, that sometimes we don't actually know what's going on in their minds, and it's hard to kind of put a number to it and a percentage. Coming back to the question of, are the hunts coordinated in that, I think it's also, to be honest, a bit of a 50-50. From what I've seen, sometimes they're opportunistic. A pack will be running along, and it's just been lambing season, and you've got all these babies impala, and the pack will spread into 5 different directions and kill 5 impalas at the same time because they're small impala. And there's obviously no coordination in that. But then I've also seen them hunting like kudu before, where the alpha kind of run off in their direction. Next thing you know, like the younger dogs are coming close behind, they're flanking this thing, and the alpha somehow is in the perfect position to take down the kudu. And I think in those kind of situations, there is definitely a level of coordination. So I think, and I'm sorry for the long-winded answer, but I think in summary, if a wild dog pack have the numbers and they're very hungry and they're desperate, and they do want to coordinate and get to the 80% success rate, I think they can. But I think there's also often circumstances where they might just do it for fun.
What the thing amazed me is when we started filming them from drones while they were hunting, and we started seeing twice the amount of kills, but scrub hares, baby steenbok, baby dikers, and it was a single dog, and it just gone. And so I think there's a lot of those kills that you just don't see because of the nature of a lot of the bush we follow them in.
Yeah. No, for sure. And even that, like a scrub hare, I mean, I've got a little domestic dog that's lying next to me here. She's a little Afrikaner, and if she could catch a scrub hare, she would. Whether she wants to eat or play with it, I'm not sure. So I think that's where the kind of grey area comes in.
Okay, so I've lost that question now. There we go. Rosemary would like to know, what is the average litter size for a wild dog?
Average litter size, we look at about 5 and 15 wild dogs. Where I think the record we've touched on is 23, and obviously in some litters it might only be 2 or 3. Sometimes wild dogs do have smaller litters. So yeah, I think it's a good question. I think 5 to 15, and it's also good, obviously, in terms of success rates and everything else that follows. 15 dogs to raise to adulthood is always tough, whereas a pack with 5 pups, might do a better job of it. But wild dogs actually are, because of how much they put their body on the line and the pups first, while there actually is a fairly good success rate with rearing pups, which is quite exciting. So it's also a reason why we look at having very kind of fluid pack numbers and population numbers, is purely for that reason. Sometimes we're worried because we're sitting 50 dogs less.
We've got a tech issue. Just give us a second there.
Okay. Could it be on my end?
No, it's definitely our end. We're trying to get rid of an echo, and it's just not going away. Sorry about that. There we go. There was another good question here. Yeah. There was a question I'm just trying to find out from Tanis. Could you please tell me the average adult wild dog size by comparison with a common domestic dog breed?
Another great question. I mean, I think in very short, I'd say about 25 kgs. I think immediate, like a kind of German Shepherd size, would be the best or easiest indicator.
Okay. So Sketch Cats' Jack Russell caught a mouse the other night, so there we go, point proven there.
There we go,
Betty B is wondering, the 23 pups, how did they get fed? Do you actually know what the mortality rate was in a litter that size?
I can't recall how many of those made it through. I don't think I think there would have been a high mortality rate. For the first 6 weeks, pups only rely on milk. They have a very short gestation period, which often links to the fact that they become heavily dependent on milk. And that runs for 6 weeks. So obviously there's some level of competition between the pups. But just like domestic dogs, they also runts in a litter, and they don't all kind of come out as strong as one another. So in that particular case, I can't remember. I mean, that was also an extreme kind of case. I think from the averages we've seen, it's much closer to 5 to 15, much more in the norm.
And then I just saw, I've lost the question again. I keep doing it. It's a really excellent question from Raphael. Do you keep genetics in mind when reintroducing? Do you try bring animals with the most similar genetic makeup to the ones that became locally extinct before?
Yeah, very, very good question. Genetics are an incredibly important part of conserving the species, and a lot of effort goes into outbreeding as much as possible. So we've got genetic kits, which range between collecting fecal samples, hair samples, blood samples, and scat samples. And basically every time we immobilize a wild dog, that genetic kit goes to UNIS report, and we have that processed, and from the genetics we get 3 main readings, which are called heterozygosity, inbreeding coefficient, and number of alleles. And we then have a database within South Africa where we now have a very good source of information on the genetics, and with that we tie in with family trees, we can very manage populations for these reintroductions. So when you consider any kind of reintroduction, it's certainly something that we take very seriously. And from a research project actually done last year, the genetic diversity in South Africa in the fenced populations is actually exceeds any other population throughout Southern Africa. And in fact, we kind of on par with Wangi National Park in Zimbabwe. So we kind of use free roaming reserves where, like Wangi and like Okavango, to try get a good measure on the genetics that we want to recover. And then, of course, we also mindful of the fact that there is genetic variation between dogs in South Africa, dogs in East Africa, dogs in Northwest Africa. So we look very carefully at the historical records of where dogs roamed and through those geographic boundaries that exist. So yeah, genetics are a very important thing, and it's not for saving the species like an African wild dog. It's not just about uh, growing their numbers, it's about growing quality and numbers too, which is in the form of genetics.
For those of you a bit unsure, the bigger genetic variation there is in the population, the better chance the population has to see off disease or a sudden change in the environment around them. Okay, thank you very much, JS. JS would like to know, are there any zoo conservation groups that are working with the Endangered Wildlife Trust at the moment?
Yeah, and thank you very much for that question. There are zoos. There's a couple in Europe. We've also work with Painted Dog Conservation Incorporated, which the chairman of that is actually also the Perth Zoo. Yeah, I think to answer the question, there's obviously I think in today's world there's so much variation between zoos. There's some zoos that are very ethically responsible, raising great awareness, doing education and fundraising, and put a lot of support back into conservation. Then obviously there's also a growing number of captive centers and breeding centers that are kind of claiming to be conservationists but aren't, and they in fact are becoming more of a threat to conservation. And I'm not just talking about African wild dogs, I'm just talking about species in general. So we're very careful. We do, we certainly acknowledge the place for it, and we work very well with some well-institutioned organizations. But yeah, I don't want to say a blanket statement that we like that we work with zoos completely, or like we pick carefully. Yeah.
You're very, very particular. And again, that is one of the reasons that us at PaintedDog.tv love getting to chat to the guys from EWT, because we know they've done their homework and we are dealing with proper professionals that actually have the well-being of the species as a whole at heart. Thank you, Wildcats, who says wild dogs all the way. And then, Peter Jean Roberts would like to know, how many teats does a female wild dog have?
Oh, sorry, what's that, Brent?
How many teats does a female wild dog have? That's from Peter.
Good question. We know of it as 8. In terms of a larger litter size, I don't know if that would be biologically. We'd have to chat to the vets, but I don't know if that could vary. But yeah, good question.
Thank you, Barbara. Grumpy old man would like to know, do only the alpha pair mate?
So again, it's kind of where wild dogs have really given us the kick in the backside. We always kind of knew only the alpha pair, only the alpha male and alpha female to mate. More previously, and even in terms of what I've witnessed in monitoring, we do have a hierarchy in wild dogs, and sometimes your beta male might mate with your beta female. I think what's also interesting though is even though an alpha male is a very strong, has a strong kind of role in the pack, we've even seen it now when, once they've done the deed and mated with the female, sometimes their testosterone decreases significantly and you have other males that are kind of competing for that alphaship. So we have actually seen it in times, through research that sometimes other wild dogs within a pack or other males might mate with the alpha female. So it's a little bit more mixed than we thought.
Of course, and as I love to say, that the animals don't read the books, only we do.
Yeah.
There was a pack I actually saw in northwestern Botswana, where an alpha female, beta female, and gamma female all gave birth in a row, and you had the alpha female's pups feeding the gamma female's pups that were in den, regurgitating to them. But that's the only time I've heard of that.
It's amazing.
That was at Mapula, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. No, it's amazing.
There's some excellent questions coming through here. Butterfly would like to know, how do wild dogs determine who becomes the alpha pairs?
Oh, that's a good one, and that's a tough one. And I'll be honest, I mean, the amount of times I've sat with wild dogs and I kind of watch the social interactions, and I wish I could climb inside their brain and figure out what they're doing. I wish I knew. Um, without kind of pulling away from or going against some ideas, I was a little bit surprised, admittedly, when watching the BBC documentary on wild dogs. I was a little bit surprised when I heard about. Oh, must I not go into that?
That BBC one, are you talking about the one at Minor Pools?
The who calling to kind of vote the alpha ship, like who's going to be alpha, you know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I don't know. I think it's a nice idea, and I think again it's we kind of like to give. So sometimes we let our human emotions get in the way, but I mean, to be honest, I've literally. It's weird. We wanting to write a paper on it. We've had two or three occasions in the last 4 years. The wild dogs have actually lost a leg to snaring, and they've become effectively tripods or three-legged wild dogs. And you'd automatically assume that they'd be shunned to the bottom of the pile and just kind of live out their days with the pack. But in all these cases, like, they've often become the alpha in those packs. And I think in terms of what we know about them, I'd in some ways relate it back to domestic dogs. You might have your German Shepherd, but your Jack Russell might be the alpha in
All
your
about
own
attitude.
yeah. And I think there's a level of testosterone and hormones and personalities that also come into the mix, aside from just being the biggest and the strongest kind of thing. So yeah, I wish I had a more concrete answer, and I'm sure scientists would probably tell you something a lot more scientific-y, but that's my personal feeling.
Well, I think if you look at it, it's a lot like people or other animals. A lot of times it's the attitude that determines
Yeah,
what's going to happen. Yeah.
yeah,
And I mean, if you look at hyenas, for example, that same thing, that the lowest ranked female can work her way to eventually to become the matriarch eventually. But so
yeah,
there's lots of stuff, and I think we're learning so much now that I think people are nothing to take away from the scientists and the observations that came before, but I think we're almost looking with different eyes now, and with the advent of all the different technologies we've got, we can see so much more that might have been missed in the past.
yeah. No, you're right. I think there certainly is. Looking in the last few years and the introduction of social media and letting people really get a good exposure to these animals. I think it's a human comfort zone to, again, we speak about putting things in the box or kind of trying to write the rules, and in our eyes, maybe like the less animals know or understand, the easier it is to kind of tolerate or like live amongst them, or and yeah, I just personally, I love having an open mind, and I love learning from them, because you can, without speaking their language, it purely means that you have to sit and observe and watch and take notes and be open-minded about what their next move might be.
Thank you so much, JS. And then Barbara's just commenting, and Barbara Russell says, when I was in the Serengeti, parts of the area had no painted dogs. Has there been any attempts to relocate them? Just before I left the Mara, there was a free-roaming pack of dogs that arrived in northern Serengeti. People weren't sure where they came from. However, the biggest problem with the Masai Mara and Serengeti ecosystem with the wild dogs is that they're completely surrounded by people, and all the Maasai generally keep dogs. So distemper and rabies, which I'm going to let Cole talk a bit more about, are two very big problems, particularly in the Serengeti and Masai Mara ecosystem, as well as a lot of other ecosystems through Africa.
Yeah, Brent, it's certainly something. It's an interesting thing, right? A disease we qualify as one of the big three threats to wild dogs in South Africa, and what's quite interesting is we get a lot of I won't say criticism, but people people sometimes frown upon the fact that we have fenced reserves, whereas, in a lot of other places in Africa, it's open systems. But I think what it has taught us is, we have an increasing population, and with that, there's an increase in human development. And the more people there are, unfortunately, the more kind of negativity it eventually has on our ecosystems and our wildlife and on the habitat. So South Africa has been fencing now for decades, and it's starting to show the pros to it, where, South Africa is the only country in the whole of Africa where we have a stable or increasing wild dog and cheetah population. And a lot of that is because we have fences around our protected areas, which reduces persecution, reduces disease, reduces roadkill. And unfortunately, none of us like fences. We all wish we could have these free open spaces. But I think we're starting to see the impacts now that, a lot of the African countries have often claimed their free roaming systems. They're now on a point where you look at all the African park reserves, they're starting to fence the reserves because it's the most practical and efficient way of conserving what's inside. So coming back to your point about disease, is when you just consider South Africa, for example, we've had just canine distemper, we've had outbreaks in Kamab, Hlui Game Reserve in 2015, Kruger in 2015, and then Limpopo Leopardi. And then there's been rabies in Madikwe and 2 other reserves. So
we got hit by rabies badly here on Rietspraat. Our whole pack was wiped out.
Yeah. So I mean, funny enough, I tallied those numbers just this last week, and in about 6 years, just from disease, in the last 6 years, we've lost over 55 wild dogs just from disease. And you can imagine the effects that maybe if the reserves weren't fenced, how much that might have spread. So yeah, disease is horrible. And when you look at rabies and canine distemper, wild dogs are an incredibly social animal, and it just takes session or one little bit of bonding or social interaction, and a whole pack will be wiped out. And sadly, it's not a nice thing to say, but the only silver lining to these 2 diseases that have been most threatening to packs is that they usually kill a whole pack within 2 weeks, in terms of the incubation period. So the kind of pro to all of that is that it at least doesn't let the disease spread to too many other packs, because that obviously could be compromise the whole wild dog population otherwise.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. There's quite a few people. Lisa, Applehead, Rob are asking, how does the secession work in the pack? So if one of the alphas dies, is it immediately the beta, or does the pack disperse?
Yeah, so good question. I think in terms of the stability of the pack is an important thing. In a smaller pack where you might have, let's say, a mother and a father and some pups, and that if a mother dies, obviously there's a very strong instinct against wild dogs inbreeding. So that father wouldn't just mate with the daughter because he would know that that's his daughter and wouldn't really want to mate with her. So what that would do in that case is potentially expand their territory and start looking for new alpha females, in that kind of case scenario. In a larger, more stable pack where you might have, say, 5 adult males and 5 adult females, generally there is a hierarchy, and the beta, in the case that the alpha female dies, the beta will kind of take her place. So I think the important thing within this question is the relatedness and the structure within the pack. So long as the next female in line is unrelated to that male, then then there's a good chance that one will just kind of transfer into the beta. I think it's also important that the alpha and beta aren't always like a lifelong thing. We see over the years, we've seen things change. Coming back to that like hormonal thing on how to pick the alpha, it's not to say the alpha female will stay alpha for her whole life. It sometimes does happen. But we've had an alpha female that's been snared, lost her leg. She was a 3-legged dog, and for 2 years she kind of fulfilled the beta female position. And then 3 years later she fell pregnant and became alpha once again. So I think there's a lot of like fluidity in pack dynamics and structure.
Thanks so much. That is an excellent answer. And then I saw another great one here. Oh, this is it's a bit of a controversial one. Lady Macbeth would like to know what you think about the sneezing. I think everyone knows by my smile what I think about the sneezing to go hunting. But sorry, my wild dog is being a pain.
Oh, what wild dog do you have? Oh, cute, man. Oh, thank you for the question. The sneezing, I'm assuming by the sneezing it's when they choose to vote to go hunting. Is that the kind of which
is?
Let me to put it simply, I'd kind of categorize that in the who calling for the alpha kind of question, where I think just to take one more knock at science for the evening, I think we as monitors and researchers and whatever it might be, you can sit and you can monitor and you can take data, and if you've really got like a strong question or answer that you want to prove, with all these kind of statistical analyses and models you can do, in my opinion, if you really want to get to an answer like well enough, you can manipulate the data to do so. So
stats are very dangerous because statistically, what's it? Diet Coke makes you fat because statistically fat people drink Diet Coke. So you've got to be very careful of stats.
That's a good thing. That's a good summary of it. Yeah. So I don't believe it. I really don't. I think when they're hungry they eat, or move they eat, but I don't think they need to vote to hunt.
I agree with you 100%. So I'm just trying to see. There we go. Cole and I are definitely on the same page when it comes to the sneezing.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to keep sure. She's kept trying to bite my toes to get me to play with her. So her name is actually my her proper name, which is Wild Dog, in Shanghai.
Oh, cool, man. Funny enough, I've also got my little, I think I mentioned my little Africanus, which I named Leasley after a little wild dog, a three-legged wild dog that I used to monitor, little hero. Yeah.
There's a good question. We get off you go, you terrible creature. we get a lot. In the Sabi Sands and stuff. There's been a lot of mange amongst particularly big cats. It's been amongst the lion population and the leopard population to a degree. And Butterfly is wondering, is mange a big issue for the dogs?
I wouldn't, just in terms of what I know, I wouldn't call it a big issue. It's certainly not like a threat that we address per se. I mean, when you look at like some of the impacts that it has had on things like jackal and some of the other carnivores, it certainly is an issue. But wild dogs, I wouldn't. It's kind of like a disease like TB, where wild dogs can get affected from it and they can have it, but in terms of it being like a real threat to the species, I wouldn't categorize mange as a high priority. And in fact, I haven't actually personally, and don't quote me on this. Just from what my knowledge is, I haven't actually seen a wild dog die from mange before.
I was actually even trying to think if I've even seen a wild dog with a bad case of mange, and I can't actually. No. And I mean, they're moving through the same area as the lions and leopards that have had really chronic cases, from cubs, the whole pride covered.
Yeah, it's a great question, and again, I mentioned it earlier. I'm the first one to put my hand up to learn something. Perhaps perhaps wild dogs have some sort of immunity, and the vets could certainly help me answer that. But maybe it's just not something they're very susceptible to.
There we go. Another question: all wild dogs vaccinated against rabies and distemper? I think EWT has had a very successful program in vaccination, but of course, I think some of the free ranging packs haven't been got to yet.
Yeah, I really like that question because, firstly, I think the first question is there's a bit of an ethical dilemma to this. Me as an avid conservationist that want to see all wild dogs survive, I would advocate for doing vaccinations. For another side of on the flip side, people still like to believe that we live in these kind of, these are wild animals, like we shouldn't be managing them or intervening, let the natural processes play out. I'd very strongly argue that we have not given that luxury to ourselves or to the animals we manage anymore. So many of our reserves are isolated, and there's so many populations that are kind of hugging the fringes of those reserves, and it's often domestic animals and human-induced diseases, which are canine distemper and rabies, that often affect our animals. So whenever, just to kind of cover that basis, whenever people talk about saying, well, it's not very natural or invasive to vaccinate a wild dog, I firstly would say that I feel like that it is important. I think on the other side of the coin, and in terms of justifying it, because I am an advocate for vaccinations, whenever we've done reintroductions or taken wild dogs into other areas of Africa, we vaccinate those dogs. From a cost perspective and logistical perspective, vaccinations aren't hugely expensive, but they do require top-ups like 6 weeks later. And so in terms of actually pulling it off and paying for a vet to do it and ordering the vaccines, you then have to keep a very close record of the dogs you have vaccinated and then give them their boosters 6 weeks later. So, when you talk about the logistics of it, it does become very difficult. And the ethics of having to knock a dog, immobilize a wild dog twice in 6 weeks is also questionable. So there's all these kind of factors at play. And as I said, if you've immobilized a dog to put a collar on, then why not just give it a vaccination if you can, kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, the short answer to it is it's very difficult on a logistical basis, and but not to say that if there is a rabies outbreak that has been identified, let's say there's suddenly a strong case in the community in Zululand, then it would definitely give us more motivation to put a lot more effort into that. But yeah, it's a very tough task to manage otherwise. And on top of that, we also encourage, the source of the problem versus trying to always attack or always trying to implement it on wild animals, is rabies and canine distemper are often domestic based. So let cure the problem outside in the communities first, as a first prize.
Grumpy Old Man says wild dogs don't get mange because they don't sit still long enough for the mites to jump on.
Maybe. That might be our answer we're looking for.
You've just solved it all, Grumpy Old Man.
Can write that down.
Barbara, just send an email through to info@paintedog.tv and we'll see if we can help you with that problem. Now, before we say goodbye to Cole, there's a question that I'm sure myself and quite a few people have been dying to ask you. And what is your, let's keep it to top 2 wild dog sightings ever?
Oh, top 2 wild dog sightings. That's a tough question. I'll have you know. So sadly, more in recent years, I've been so involved with management and introductions and stuff, and I was actually just chatting about it with one of my colleagues today. I don't get the time that I used to, that I'd love to still, to actually go sit and just love being around dogs and watch them interact. So often when I'm going to wild dogs, wherever it might be in South Africa, it's always there to do a mission, to put a collar on, to capture, to kind of do the dirty grit of the work. And sometimes taking the time to enjoy the aftermath is not always a thing. So I think in terms of my best sightings in my more biased state, when we've introduced a pack somewhere, and sometimes we've taken unrelated males and females and we've physically rubbed them together, put them in a boma, created a new whole pack. And a year later, you hear about them. The females fallen pregnant and the pups have come through, and you've kind of been a part of the process and getting a pack to a new territory where they might have not been before. And then you can go like a year later and actually see them in the wild and kind of watch those interactions. I think in terms of my best sightings, I'd actually have to say those kind of moments because of the kind of backstory and the conservation like experience that I've had. Coming back to just visually in terms of what I've seen. Yeah, I don't know. I think I always enjoyed hunts. Obviously, hunts are always exciting and they always get people riled up. I've been fortunate enough to witness quite a lot of hunts before. I've also witnessed, one of my favorites is watching a wild dog enter one of those like shallow puddles or splash pools, and on a hot day, and watching them start running around and chasing each other in a splash pool. So I'm sorry, I'm being very vague, but without sounding too soppy or emotional, I think with so much of this reintroduction work and expansion work that we're doing, I think the biggest where I'm passionate right now, and in terms of what I really get a kick out of it, is just seeing wild dogs prosper where they're supposed to. In general.
That's an excellent answer. Well, Cole, thank you. Oh, wait, let's see. I thought we had one last question and we haven't. Cole, it was been really, really great having you with us. And guys, you're going to have to, we'll be chatting to Cole again, I'm sure, quite soon. And of course, there's all the excitement of the Lapalala pack of dogs that are in the Boma, which we'll be hopefully heading up to tomorrow or the next day. And now, just talking about that, I actually wanted to ask you, that Lapalala pack is genetically distinct, not that only pack, but the Waterberg wild dogs. So have they just survived amongst the farmers and the hunters and whatnot for longer? It's amazing.
Yeah. No, Brent, so Lapalala, for those that don't know, it's in the Limpopo area, more specifically in the Waterberg. And for sure, I mean, those wild dogs roam freely there. They're not in Kruger, which is a massive designated area of safe space, and they're also not in some of the fence reserves that we manage on the side. These are wild dogs that have been there since the beginning of time without ever being introduced or managed per se. And the Lapalala and the surroundings, the Waterberg area, it's a truly phenomenal place, and it's it's a bit of a wild dog paradise. And unfortunately, in the same area that where these wild dogs roam, there's obviously farmers and development happening in these areas, and because of that, there's obviously a high level of human-animal conflict. But in terms of what the EWT and one of my colleagues and friends, Derek, have done up there in terms of working with the people, raising awareness, kind of increasing the appreciation of the species, there's been a really huge step forward in terms of getting community buy-in to conserve the wild dogs of the Waterberg. And Lapalala, it's a beautiful reserve. It's about 50,000 hectares. They've got high prey numbers. This pack that are in there, unfortunately, did come under threat, and we worked very closely with Lapalala and with some of the vets. Zoe Glyphis is one of them that went up there, and we're luckily able to capture them and bring them to safety. So, yeah, the idea is now that they are in a safe space or safe area, they can be released on Lapalala, which still forms part of the Waterberg, and kind of live out their days in peace there. So yeah, it's certainly exciting times, and I'd just like to thank you. Obviously, with working in the last couple of weeks with you and with Lapalala, it's been so great to have your support, and kind of we love to harness people's passion and conservation, and I think in terms of what you contribute to that, and bringing in the viewers and kind of showing the species for what they are, I think a lot of good must be said about you and your company, and thank you for all the support so far.
Thank you very much, and thanks again very much, Cole, for joining us. As I said, we'll be chatting to Cole again soon, and there'll be lots of updates on my favorite animal coming. Thank you so much, Cole, and I'll chat to you probably tomorrow on our way up to the Waterberg. So everyone get ready, keep your, I suppose, just watch our social media. There's going to be lots coming. Thanks so much, Carl. Cheers.
Well, thanks everyone. Cheers. Goodbye.
I'm a Luddite. Now how do I... there we go. Hi, guys. That was really, really, really wonderful to have Cole with us this evening. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And of course, as I said, we're going to be disappearing up to the Waterberg shortly to go start that installation. So keep a lookout on all our social media accounts for that news. Now, in other exciting news, the multi-talented man behind the thumb, Brian Joubert, has been busy designing some new Teespring kit, and I know a lot of you wanted caps, so caps are quite stylish, if I do say so myself. Look at that. Very, very well done, Brian. And I think what I definitely want one of the next things, and that is Scarface the Lion shirt, but almost with like a 70s 80s vibe. I think that's absolutely awesome. So that's one of my photographs of Scarface that Brian has turned into a very trendy looking t-shirt, I suppose to say. And again, a big thank you to everyone who's been supporting the push for the wild dogs. We have got over what we asked for. Thank you very much. Anything over and beyond will be going into the future planning for those wild dogs, whether it be for collars or something else, but we will keep you fully updated from that. For now, I've got some other very exciting news. In the not too distant future, painterdog.tv will be offering the possibility of live private drives through a few different avenues. There will be private drives unfortunately for us to be able to produce them, we are going to have to charge. It is quite an expensive process to get a live feed out, but of course Animal World Live and the other shows will not be. So very, very exciting stuff. So we will keep you updated on that. But for now, I'm going to eat and go to bed because I got to get up early to drive far to go see some wild dogs.